Mental disorders are common in the United States and internationally. An estimated 26.2% of Americans age 18 and older, about 1 in 4 adults, suffer from a diagnosable mental disorder in a given year. In this story, The Day the Voices Talk, Ken Steele experiences this firsthand. The Voices arrived without warning on an October night in 1962 when I was 14 years old. "Kill yourself. Set yourself afire," they said. Only moments before, I'd been listening to a musical group called Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons singing "Walk Like a Man, Fast as I Can" on the small radio that sat on the night table beside my bed. But the terrible words I heard now were not the lyrics to that song. I stirred, thinking I was having a nightmare, but I wasn't asleep, and the voices, low and insistent, taunting and ridiculing, continued to speak to me from the radio. "Hang yourself," they told me. "The world will be better off. You're no good. No good at all." Terrified, I turned off the radio and got out of bed and crept down the hallway in my bare feet. A full harvest moon lighting my way, but the voices would not be tuned out. They accompanied me. "You should die," muttered one. "You should have never been born," shrieked another. Someone or something wanted me to die. Who was doing the talking? What was going on? I started to turn the handle to the door of my parents' bedroom, looking for safety, but my mom and dad were sleeping soundly, and I was afraid to wake them. I knew they had to go to work in the morning. My father, named Kenneth but called Bud, had wanted a baseball-playing son. I was a boy who read books. I took my first steps jogging along a baseball bat that my father had placed in my hand. I can later remember peeing my pants during a Little League game so I wouldn't have to play, but Dad forced me to go on the field in the soiled uniform. Over the years, in ways both stern and subtle, he made it abundantly clear that I had failed him. "He won't believe you." The voices were right. This was not a man to whom I could confide that I was hearing things. I wandered down the stairs of our tiny Cape Cod-style house to my grandmother's bedroom. Emma May Wilder Wyatt, my mother's mother, was my best friend. I could tell her anything, and she would still love me. As I turned the knob to her room, the voices in my head grew shriller and louder until I felt I was drowning in sound. "Die, die, die. You're worthless. No good. Do it now, not later." I staggered into the living room and collapsed on the floor. My mother found me lying there in the morning. Standing over me in the still darkened room, my mom was saying, "What are you doing downstairs in your pajamas, Kenny? Don't let your father find you like this." There were two soundtracks coming at me at once. I felt bombarded by the noise and terrified by the strangeness of what was happening. "Act normal," I told myself. I washed and dressed hurriedly. "Look how ugly you are," the voices taunted as I checked myself out in the bathroom mirror. A familiar face stared back at me. Long, wavy brown hair, eyes that looked either brown or hazel, and a longish face that others might describe as handsome. Like most teenagers, I was hypocritical of my appearance, but the voices were even harsher. "You're ugly," they screamed. "How can you bear to look at yourself?" I went down to breakfast and forced myself to eat. My parents soon left for work. And as she did every morning, Grandma let me watch the Today Show, one of my favorite television programs, before I left for school. Whenever I was near a television set or radio, the voices grew louder and more intense, and there seemed to be more of them, as if they were writing and directing the story of my life, telling me what I could and could not do, leaving little room for improvisation. That evening, the voices went out. As my father quizzed me about what we had seen on TV, what I knew, what I thought, I did as the voices directed. I put my hands over my ears, and I turned my back to him. Dad became enraged. "Go to bed without dinner," he ordered me, stalking out of the living room. It was a punishment he rarely imposed. "Ungrateful boy, now see what you've done," said my voices. "You have disappointed your father one more time. Your parents deserve a better son than you." Day after day, I sailed about in an ocean of sound so overwhelming I would sometimes find myself capitulating to the voices' demands. "Okay, I'll kill myself," I would tell them. "Anything, if they would only let me be for just a while." I was a perpetual guest at a noisy party, seeking a quiet corner, vainly trying to bargain for just a little peace. "Okay, I'll set myself on fire. I'll hang myself. Yes, I'll kill myself." It was August. Only when I heard my mother scream and felt my father shaking me into consciousness did I realize that I had blurted out those words in the living room in front of my entire family. The voices told me what I needed to do then. No more hiding. Your family knows everything now, they said. You gotta escape. Get out now. Run, run. You gotta die. So I ran away from home. It was black under the white birches, maples, and pine trees, their stinging branches as dark as my fear. In the forest, the voices took over completely, but strangely, they also seemed more softer, consoling. It's really not your fault, the voices would tell me. You didn't bring this on yourself, you know. Still, their message was clear. I have to die. Over the last several months, the message had become more potent, for the voices had offered to help, even given me explicit instructions. Get a rope, they ordered me, 12 feet long and 2 inches thick. I'd gone to a hardware store and bought the rope. Tie a noose with the C-knot and make sure it's tied tight, the voices said, but they hadn't told me how to make the knot. One day at school, I approached a fellow Boy Scout, someone who had done knot tying to earn one of his badges. How can I learn to tie a C-knot? I asked him. He gave me the name of an instruction manual, an old New England primer with drawings of tall ships that provided illustrated step-by-step directions on how to tie the knot, expand the size of the loop, and how to make sure the knot would not come out. I found myself a copy of the book in the town library, and I practiced tying knots. At the direction of the voices, I had also taken a step stool from the basement and hidden it in the forest, covering it over with branches and leaves. I bought lighter fluid and matches and left them in the small lockers I'd hidden in the same area. When all the preparations had been made, the voices were pleased with me. Good. Your suicide kit is complete, they said. That night, the night I ran away, I made 3 different attempts on my life. First, I got up on the stool, and then tied the noose around my neck. But even though I tossed and thrashed about, I couldn't manage to kick the stool away. I had failed, and the voices had made much of this. You weren't able to do this simple thing, they said. You're not man enough. They called me things like sissy and faggot. They called me a sow. You're a nasty pig, they said. I got down from the stool, then the voices turned into a wave of sound so strong, I felt as if I'd been physically knocked down by their force. Tears streaming down my face, I located the charcoal lighter fluid and poured it on my head. I could not bring myself to light a match. The highway, I thought, half running, half dragging myself in my disoriented state about a mile to Route 69. My plan was to leap in front of a car. I stood at the side of the road. Headlights were coming at me. Now, I told myself. But just then, I noticed a spotlight atop the car. What if this was a state police car? What if the police were looking for me? Panicked, I ran back from the road, back towards the school that sat in the dark and deserted summer night. I crouched behind the building, clinging to its hard concrete walls for what seemed like an eternity. After a while, I went back to the forest and fell asleep. The following morning, I rose and headed for home. My parents' cars were in the driveway. It must be the weekend or a holiday, I figured. That's why their cars were there. It never occurred to me that my mom and dad were home because of the